Hello YouTubers, this is the Noobifier, and welcome to part 2 of Ship and Weapon Balance, the good and the bad. I base all my content on no bullshit, so let's get right to it. The Super Hornet is super drifty. I rented one before making this video because I needed to see how it worked for myself. I have more hours in that ship than I care to admit. I CCU'd it to a Sabre on concept, so in essence I haven't flown it for some time. It immediately felt like home. I've been trying out as many ships as I could get my hands on, mostly the Gladius and the Avenger Titan. Getting back into the Super Hornet gave me the sense that I could take an enemy head-on, something that I haven't felt since melting it. The one thing that I wasn't expecting is to end up flying sideways all the time. It's not unmanageable, but it's easy to see what other people are saying. The combat is fine and the ship is effective, but it does seem really heavy. When looking at the current leaderboard, it's easy to see that most competitive pilots are opting to take advantage of a normal Hornet in lieu of a Super Hornet. When I asked some pilots why, the answer was the same. The base Hornet doesn't drift anywhere near as much as the Super Hornet. You can get almost the same loadout simply by crossing over all the gear. In essence, you get a mini one-seated Super Hornet. I don't think the Super Hornet flight model should ever be fully agile like a Gladius or something. The community accepts their role as a tank. It should be a little bit drifty. Having said that, I do think that we need to balance pass. The Super Hornet physics don't anywhere near match the base Hornet. A bit of extra fuselage shouldn't turn a fighter into a dump truck. If the Super Hornet gets adjusted closer to a standard Hornet, it's going to be important to take into consideration how that would alter the rest of the fleet. In my opinion, one way to prevent a balance issue between the top fighters would be to give the Sabre a solid increase in boost fuel reserve. Adding more boost to the Sabre won't alter any of its flight characteristics with the current model. I'm personally very happy with how the Sabre flies. So why would I increase the boost? The Sabre relies on its agility to counter its lack of armor. Getting into one of those back and forth scissor battles kills the boost, and then the ship is at an extreme disadvantage. The increase will give the pilot more options and the ability to counter the more durable Super Hornet. People are super passionate about their preferred ship. I'm not proposing to make a Super Hornet into a Gladius, but it should behave as expected. Let's look at shields. It's a known issue that ballistics and shields are not where they're supposed to be. Currently, ballistics go through the shields at the same rate, whether they're 50%, 5%, or 100%. This is why everyone is currently favoring ballistics in Arena Commander. Ballistic damage reduction needs to scale based on shield health. I know that this topic has been mentioned already. It's more for those pilots who don't know yet, and also to keep some light on this issue. The shields should have a progressive reduction in bullet damage depending on their state. Absorbing bullet damage should reduce the shield's state, offering less effect on follow-up hits. I'm obviously not a game designer, and I do understand that it's very easy for me to suggest things without knowing the full complexity. In spite of that, I feel the shield system should be a bigger priority for 2.4. I also don't see the need to fix the weapon balance until the shields are fixed. It makes more sense to fix the problem and then adjust the balance. Now into something that bothers a lot of citizens, the price gap. Whenever there's a big gap between the pledge price and the perceived value, there's always going to be a very large threat in the form somewhere. The current 3 human flyable alien ships are a prime example. However, as WTFosaurus pointed out, there's no way to really know the real cost and how it'll translate into the persistent universe when it goes live. The reason it's important to remember this is that when CIG launches something like the Blade, they're probably pricing it with the PU in mind, and not only what it can do in Arena Commander. So with that, let's talk about ship prices, or more specifically, pledge prices. We know that CIG tries to price most of the ships based on their assessed value. A pledge is not about buying a ship, it's about supporting the game. But I firmly believe that the pledge cost and the game value should always be a priority when launching a new concept. If you were to compare a $200 fighter versus a $50 fighter, it should be fairly obvious to see that one is roughly 1/4 as effective or offers much more possibility to the pledge backer. There is such a thing as specialty function. Some ships have very unique gameplay mechanics associated with them. I remember the forums exploded with hate when the Genesis Starliner was launched. People complained that the pledge price of over $400 wasn't going to be a good value. I shook my head because it was like people couldn't see the potential of the ship. I don't mean to say that CIG should just juice the prices on everything in the future. Value needs to be assessed to take into consideration all things. That price value should be balanced across the line of pledges. The pledge price should reflect what the pledge will allow the citizen to do in the verse. Let's take a look at the Avenger Titan and the Aurora LN. They are very well placed in relationship to each other. The LN is now $35. It's a solid pledge and it's clearly a great ship when compared to the other Aurora ships. The Avenger Titan is now $50 and it's an even better value than the LN. The issue with the Titan is that it's such a great ship that in my opinion it offers even more ship for the money than any ship below $100 in pledge, with one exception, the Gladius. It has great cargo, a strong weapon load, a bed, and even has modularity. One could say that the Titan makes the 300 series a poor value. You should post in the comments why I'm wrong about the 300 series. Personally, I think the Titan should have been released at the same price as the Stalker. It's very easy to say all this with hindsight, and yes, I'm bringing it up, but not because I think it needs to be adjusted, but because it's important for this kind of thing to get aired out. The Sabre price point was spot on. The Super Hornet and Sabre are both fighters, but are very unique in how they achieve success. The pledge costs are almost the same, and in spite of their completely different methods, I don't believe that one has a particular advantage over the other. Using the rule, you get what you pledge for, reduces all the confusion for new citizens trying to make sense of all this. I'm going to close out this segment with 2 observations. When the Starfarer drops with 2.3 live, it's likely going to go on sale for about $195-ish, and that ship offers a lot of lucrative gameplay. And everyone knows that the $250 blade will probably get wrecked by a $100 Hornet. But don't forget, when assessing the value of the pledge, remember the big picture and what other things that ship can do for you. Now it's time to talk about weapon balance. In most games, there always seems to be that one gun combination that's particularly good. Arena Commander is no different. Historically, most of us have all experienced Missile Commander, then the Nerf Hammer came out, and now we have missiles that do nothing. So rejoice, citizens, everything went full circle. We're getting a big update soon, and that should bring missiles back into combat. I'm personally very excited to see what's changed. When dealing with balanced and overpowered guns, it seems that in the past, the best gun just got blasted by the Nerf Hammer, and then the community scrambles to find the next best loadout. If we rinse and repeat this model, that'll eventually lead to all weapons behaving more like a garden hose. Alphas are about mechanics, and betas are about balance. One of my subscribers pointed this out, and I believe it's completely true. This is actually my first time seeing an alpha, so it's very easy to forget factors like this. Even with that said, I do still think that it's important to balance the guns, or at least try to during an alpha. This next one scares the crap out of me. A frightening trend seems to be that heat has been used to nerf some OP loadouts in the past. Heat has currently broken some guns such that they're not even viable in combat. The Mantis GT220 is a perfect example of this. That weapon was totally OP in the past, sure, but now you never see it because it overheats in 5 seconds. I guess the point is, why would you bother to make 10 guns if only one's going to be good? In my opinion, balancing weapons shouldn't always just be about adding heat, changing the spread, the rate of fire, muzzle velocity, and the most important, the actual damage that the round does. I know it's a lot easier to say this than to actually do it, but the top 10 to 15 people on the leaderboard is I think where the balance and suggestions should come from. Let's talk about laser repeaters. The laser repeater family are all about massive bursts of low damage projectiles. They have range, but due to their spread, they can't hit reliably past medium range. I believe that the spread should be brought in to make it hit more frequently. It would be pretty easy to balance that buff by reducing the individual damage per shot. More accuracy will let the weapon be used at greater range, and more hit frequency will prove more satisfying for the pilot. The second repeater issue I have is specific to the 007. It overheats much quicker than any of the others, and it takes forever to cool off. This becomes very apparent if you mix load some 007s and some 117s in the same fire group. It's pretty plain to see why I split this up into 2 videos. I feel that this addresses most balance concerns I have at this moment. Each patch seems to break and fix things at the same time. We need to keep identifying these issues so they can be fixed. So it's pretty evident that this one here was full of my opinion. I'd really like you to post your thoughts about this in the comments. I hope you like my no bullshit approach and got something out of this video. Please help me get the word out about Star Citizen by subscribing for future content like this, or maybe not quite like this. Please take some time to check out my other content, and I'll see you in the verse.